Diane, what we're going to show you tonight will make you angry. In big cities across the country, thousands of healthy people are going to great lengths to obtain handicap placards and license plates. What is supposed to be a device to allow disabled people to get around has instead become a free pass for cheaters. It's 7 a.m. in Boston, and this man is pulling off one of America's newest urban scams. Able-bodied people who use handicap placards or plates to park free anywhere they want. It's gotten so bad that in downtown Houston we saw one block where there were placards in 7 of 8 spaces. But try to talk to one of the drivers.
Excuse me, ma'am.
And she hides that placard fast.
Why is it that you don't think you have to pay the meters like everybody else? How come?
Handicap placards have become a hot item. In Florida, the number of placards almost doubled in just 5 years. In Ohio, the increase was even bigger over the same period of time.
Here in Massachusetts, there's been an explosion in the number of handicap plates and placards, from 22,000 in 1993 to more than 65,000 now. Nowhere has that felt more than here in Boston, where officials say more than half of those plates and placards are being used almost every day.
It's having a significant impact on the streets of Boston.
Frank Tremontosi, who was Boston's transportation commissioner until 2 weeks ago, says bogus placards are a big problem.
I would say at least 50% of them are not legitimate, and it's on the rise.
50%?
50% of them.
It's people with real disabilities who pay the price. People like Duncan Gillespie, who overcame a massive stroke and began a career in real estate.
And I was left with the use of only one arm and no balance in my left leg.
Business often brings Gillespie downtown. Trouble is, most handicap spaces there are filled.
This one's full. That one's full. No room in the inn on these. Sometimes it's like an act of Congress to find one.
Not a spot open, and many of them, he is sure, are filled by cheaters. How do able-bodied people get handicap credentials? We took to the streets of Boston to find out. And one of the first placards we found was a crude counterfeit.
Here's another one.
Commissioner Tremontosi showed us some of the fakes he seized and said there's an active black market.
Somebody can make $200 for selling one of those placards, and all they need is a sophisticated color copier.
That's the price on the street, though, $200 for a phony handicap placard?
Right.
But we found an even more common way to cheat, using the credentials of a disabled friend or relative. We kept seeing this woman pull into a handicap space. That plate belongs to her 85-year-old father-in-law. It turns out the woman works in a fur store directly across the street. Another morning, that space was filled. So what did she do? She drove 2 blocks to park in another handicap space.
Well, she's cheating. And she also is a bit, if you pardon the expression, lazy.
We invited Stephen Spinetto, Boston's commissioner for people with disabilities, to come along. He's had an artificial leg since a boating accident.
The building behind us is our apartment building, which has a large amount of disabled people who live in it.
And here's an able-bodied person taking one of their spots.
We're taking one of their spots when they could park in this huge empty parking lot directly next to it.
Spinetto says Boston is choking on cheaters.
This is one of the most heavily abused areas.
He took us on a tour of the financial district.
Here's a handicap spot.
Handicap spot here and another here.
And they both have placards.
Both have placards, right.
All right, well, why don't we take a look?
We've seen this car parked with a handicap placard all day for 3 straight days. So we decide to check the number on the placard with the State Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Okay, the handicap placard is
893.
119-893.
At the registry, Bob Tarantino plugs the information into his computer. A former policeman, he lost the use of his legs after a drunk driver ran him down.
Okay, the placard is issued to an Alfred Catelli. Date of birth is 6/7/23.
This fellow is 72 years old.
72 years old.
But Tarantino tells us the car is registered to someone else. Robert Catelli, age 46.
So either Mr. Cartelli is driving his relative here every day,
Right.
or he's using a relative's placard illegally.
That's very likely.
We're there later that day as the driver prepares to leave.
Mr. Catelli? Chris Wallace from ABC News. How are you, sir?
Good.
Nice to meet you. Can we ask you why you're using a handicap parking placard here?
Why?
Yeah.
No.
No what?
I have a bad back, first of all.
This is your handicap parking placard?
Well, yes, it belongs to me.
In fact, isn't it made out to an Alfred Catelli, a 72-year-old man?
Yes.
Well, that's not you.
Well, I borrowed it.
You borrow? Is that your dad?
Yes, it is.
Why are you using a handicap parking spot?
Not all the cheats pull into handicap spots. Some use their placards just to escape paying the meter. We saw this man park at a meter all day, 3 different times. On the 4th day, when we tried to ask about it, he refused. It turns out his placard belongs to a 78-year-old man. And what about that woman from the fur store, who we saw 4 different days, parking in 2 handicap spots?
I'd like to ask you why it is that you just broke the law and used a handicap parking spot.
Would you go away, please?
What do you think of people who do this?
I think it's one of the lowest forms of life, personally. I think it's terrible. I just can't believe someone would have the morals to do that.
What's worse, the cheaters are getting away with it. Officials say the fraud cost the city $500,000 a year in lost meter revenues. Even if they're caught, it's only a $75 ticket, about the same as parking in a garage for a week. Officials admit they're losing the battle.
It's pretty rampant out there.
It is. It sure is.
But if you want to see flagrant handicap parking abuse, come to Houston. What stands out here is who's doing the cheating. Because right alongside the commuters who park all day with their placards are government workers who know all too well how easy it is to work the system. This is a typical morning on Commerce Street near the county jail. Our stakeout cameras are rolling as healthy-looking county workers pull into metered spots and pull out their placards. The man in charge of parking enforcement, Joel Albright, is frustrated.
They're disgusting, just pure bottom line disgusting. They're cheating the system. It's just pure fraud for everyone.
Now the secret's out. In the Houston area, the number of placards has jumped 70,000 in the past 3 years. Cheating is so rampant, Houston has joined several other cities using disabled volunteers to patrol handicap parking.
I'm out there at least trying to stop somebody from parking where they shouldn't.
Jordan Beeman, whose legs were paralyzed in a swimming accident, loves to write tickets. He can go after people who park in handicap spots without credentials, but use a placard and Beeman is stopped cold.
I'm not even allowed to ask a person that I see doing handsprings and getting in and have a placard and asking them, what's your disability?
Healthy people get placards in Houston because there are so few controls. Anyone can mail an application to the county, and as long as they pay $5 and someone has signed a doctor's name, the county will send a placard. It's the same in most states, but Massachusetts is a bit tougher. There, a team of people with disabilities will reject an application if the person's condition doesn't meet state guidelines. But Director Frank Anastasio says if the disability qualifies and a doctor signs the form, he has to approve the placard. 2 or 3 applications a year is what his staff expects from most doctors.
There are some doctors who have submitted 100, 130 applications over the last 3 or 4 years. Does that set off alarm bells?
Sure. It's irritating alarm bells because we have to put our total trust in the physicians.
Physicians such as John Walsh of Wakefield, who has signed 101 applications since 1992. Last year, the state rejected 4 of his 14 applications. The year before, it was 8 of 37.
Hi, Chris Wallace.
Walsh turned down our request for an interview, but we caught up with him outside his office.
The fact that I fill out a form doesn't indicate that I consider them to qualify or not qualify. To me, that's a decision that's made by the registry officials. I simply fill them out, if requested by a patient, as a service to that patient.
And you'll fill out the application whether or not you think the person deserves a placard?
I make no judgment.
What's your disability, if I might ask, sir?
Got a back problem.
Back in Houston, if anyone should know right from wrong, it's those county workers. This man is a pre-sentencing investigator for the County Department of Corrections. We repeatedly saw him use a placard assigned to someone else.
That's my girlfriend's son.
If the placard is for your girlfriend's son,
Right.
why are you parking free using that?
I'm not parking free.
Well, you didn't feed the meter there, sir.
Yes, that's right. I'm illegally parked.
And there was this clerk, who we spotted parking her silver pickup day after day with her son's placard on the rear view mirror.
Do you think a county worker should be breaking the law?
That's a point that you have.
Can he keep doing it?
No.
Moments later, she moved her truck to a private lot. But not all cheaters are so quick to mend their ways. Remember the woman from the first store in Boston? After catching her early one morning, we returned 8 hours later to see if her car was still in that handicapped spot. Sure enough, it was. And she was just leaving work.
Well, I just want to know, why is it that you parked illegally all day?
Don't you have better things to do?
Actually, we think that this is kind of important.
We do think it's important. And so does Jordan Beeman, who just wrote his 83rd ticket in Houston. And Duncan Gillespie does too, every time he tries to park in Boston. Disabled people say what these cheaters are doing is not just some traffic violation.
Don't tell me parking isn't important. Remember the word independence. It's allowing us to move about. So it's not a small issue.
By the way, that woman from the first store may not be parking in handicapped spaces much longer. After learning of our investigation, the state has now begun proceedings to take back the handicap plates. If you suspect someone is abusing handicap credentials, remember that some disabilities, such as a heart condition, may not be visible. Instead of confronting the person, write down the number of the plate or placard and send it to your local officials. We'll be right back.